Hello, I am Paul. Disclaimer. Enjoy the video. Tony tried the light switch, but it did not work. He would have to make his way through a darkness that was black as death. Tony opened the fridge. Then a creak made him turn. A tall figure was staring right at him, its eyes shining in the dark. The figure became bigger as it approached. It stretched one arm, and as he did, Tony saw what the figure had in his hand. The bright silver blade shone bright, ready to cut through anything or anyone. The figure stared at Tony with a crazy look in his eyes. He raised the knife, and then...
"And then what?"
asked the boy, his eyes wide in amazement, his smile big. "And then," continued his grandfather, "then he cut through the butter and spread it on toast with some nice raspberry jam." And he gave his grandson the snack he had prepared. The bread was cold and soggy, and the raspberry jam tasted off, but Tony didn't say anything. He just laughed and munched. "There, boy, you weren't scared, were you?" asked Grandpa, reclining back into the ugly armchair. "I am not scared of anything," Tony answered. And in his mind he added, "Well, anything but Mom." "I will have to think of a better story then," Grandpa said thoughtfully. "Have I told you the story of the wolfman's hand?" Tony shook his head and resumed his position on the floor, his legs crossed, his back straight so his ears would catch every word. He knew how to be a good listener. Only when it came to Grandpa's interesting stories, of course. Tony stared with anticipation at the old man, whose hair was white and whose eyes were kind. "All right, boy, let me see if I remember." He put his arms on top of his fat belly and began. "Tony had a bleeding knee and dirty pajamas, but he kept running. There was something chasing him in the darkness of the forest. The boy has school tomorrow and needs his sleep," Tony's mom interrupted. "But Mom," pleaded Tony, extending the O for a little too long. "Well, I'm sure there's time to finish the story, Clarice," Grandpa pleaded in his way. A stern look from Mom said it all. No. No with a capital N and an even bigger O. He looked at Grandpa with a pout and a frown. The old man seemed equally devastated. Tony gave his grandpa a big hug and a big smile. Mom kissed the old man in the cheek. Then they made their way out and into Mom's car. He watched as the white building became smaller in the distance. Only when it had disappeared, he asked, "When will Grandpa come back home?" "We have talked about this, Anthony. After he's cleared to leave the hospital, he will move to a place where they have people that can take care of him and attend to his needs." Tony had learned that when his mother called him Anthony, it was best to remain silent. The next day, once school was over, Mom took Tony to Sunshine Hills Nursery Home. There were no hills, and the place felt as if it had never been touched by sunshine. Tony liked the tales about pirates and monsters and superheroes. Tony liked those stories, and he liked the man who told them, but Tony did not like the nursery home. As he waited for her mom to check them in, he peeked into the hallway. An old lady was walking with the help of a walker. Once Tony realized the woman's butt was showing, he turned away. A man with a white eye was walking right in front of him, mumbling something.
Long nails and long teeth. If you stare at him for long, his long arms will reach. Long hairs and long teeth.
Tony, Mom called. Room 134, end of the hallway to the right, and then to the right again. You go. I have to do some phone calls. Tony did not need to be told twice. He ran through the hallway of open doors, and as he turned right, he got lost. He was back at the reception. This was odd. The instructions were straightforward. He crossed the hallway again, turned, and he ended up back where he had started. Something was wrong. He made his way again, this time walking, and he realized that all the doors were closed. All but one. Room 114. The open door gave Tony the chance to peek in. There was an old woman sleeping in bed, looking like she was having a nightmare. At the other side of the bed, a nurse, crouched over, held the woman's hand close to its face. Tony knew that was not how nurses hear your heartbeat. He concluded that perhaps it was a new nurse.
Excuse me?
Tony asked. The figure took the woman's hand away from its face and slowly raised his eyes to meet Tony's. It was not a nurse. It was not even a woman. It seemed like a man, but he was not like any man Tony had seen before. This man had a very long face with a very long nose. He had long black pupils and even longer eyes which were looking right back at him. They did not seem very friendly.
Do you know where room 134 is?
Tony asked, surprised by the tremble in his voice. The man's long lips were curved into a long smile. His lips did not move, and yet Tony heard,
Are you lost?
A little, Tony said. The man's eyes twitched. His long lips parted, showing big, long teeth and a pointy, long tongue. The man's smile grew longer. It was not a pretty smile.
I just need to get to room 134. Do you know where that is?
The man stared at Tony and tilted his head, as if making sense of the words he just heard. After a long pause, Tony heard,
I know where that is. Can you point the way?
The man's face moved upward, followed by his neck. It was so long. It looked like it would reach the ceiling, but the man's eyes were fixed on Tony, making his head look like the curved part of a candy cane.
I can show you,
the man said, with that smile of his. He extended a long, hairy hand with long, crooked fingers and long, dirty nails. Tony hid his hands inside his pockets. He most definitely did not want to hold this man's hand.
I don't want to cause you trouble.
Tony was scared, but being scared, his mother had taught him, was no excuse for not being polite. A growl came from somewhere underneath the man's clothing, but the man's face did not change. He kept smiling as he said,
No trouble at all. Okay.
Tony said, unsure. The man's smile grew longer, and his eyes twinkled in the dark with hunger. A hollow, chuckled sound erupted from the man's coat as his chest bounced up and down and up and down. The man was laughing. It was not a friendly laugh. The man approached Tony, his body leading the way, its neck and head following. Tony got out of its way, and the man continued walking down the hallway. No, not walking. It sounded like the man was tippy-toeing. Tony could not see the man's feet, but he figured they must be quite small. He followed at an appropriate distance. When Tony looked up, he saw something move beneath the long coat. Then, as his eyes followed the long neck of the man, he met two long pupils. The head of the man was facing him, even though his body was pointed at the opposite direction. The man's hat got stuck on a broken ceiling tile, and as it fell, Tony saw the man's scalp blink. Tony stopped, and so did the man's head, even though the body kept moving forward, its long neck extended like taffy. Tony's feet were faster than his brain. He ran in the opposite direction. The long man opened his mouth, and dust came out with a shriek. As the head followed Tony, 10 tongues came out into the air, wanting to get a taste of the boy. The hallway seemed to get longer. Every time Tony looked back, the head was still following him, those eyes getting longer, the teeth getting sharper. Tony ran and ran and ran. Tony had never been so relieved to see an old woman's naked butt before. He stopped at the reception. The washed-out chairs and the white light had never been so welcoming before. He looked back, expecting to see that head, but he saw nothing. "Tony!" His mom startled him. "Where have you been?"
I don't like this place, Mom.
Tony said between sobs.
We can't leave Grandpa here. We can't.
Tony's mom gave him a long hug. Too long, indeed. He looked up and saw that terrible long face. The coat was open now, and Tony could see that the man's chest was all mouths. One of them spoke in his mother's voice before distorting.
Don't worry. He will be coming with us.
I got fired from the fantasy section. Whatever. Fantasy is overrated anyway. I wonder who my replacement will be. I bet they're not half as handsome. Anywho, I hoped you liked the story. Leave a comment, like and subscribe. I don't even get paid for this job.